Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome to the Salt Mine Q&A for October. And of course, if you're watching this on Monday as Mingles with Jingles, hope you all had a great weekend. Now forget it, because it's Monday. And we're going to crack straight on with the questions from the members of the audience who turned up and posted their questions here in person. The first one comes from Akiaki Kia Kaha. And honestly, this is news to me. He says, Jingles, what's your opinion on the New Zealand Navy losing a ninth of its entire fleet? This is the first I've heard of it. That's obviously... Oh, of course. Yes, they had a ship sunk, didn't they? Yes. I didn't realise that was... Well, I probably shouldn't be surprised that losing one ship means they've just lost a ninth of their entire fleet. The Royal Navy's not that big anymore, and the New Zealand Navy was never that big in the first place. But, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty nasty. I'm going to have to look into that. Thanks for the heads up. But apparently they've lost a ship. I don't know what kind of ship it was. But losing any ship is bad. It couldn't have been that big. 75 crew apparently. But apparently the crew were all safe. So that's good news. But yes, that's definitely something I'm going to have to look into. Anyway, moving on to the next question. This is from Tank 50 US. Oh yes, that's right. He's bought and is restoring an M1 Garand, isn't he? So the first thing he posts is an update. There's a picture here as well. Minus the rear sight, which he cannot restore. Oh dear. Yeah, I'll put that picture up here in the video so you can see. But he's working on a replacement. Anyway, two questions. Do you have any memory of anyone in the Royal Navy who was a complete and total screw? Yes, a complete and total screw up. For example, I went to basic with a guy who had the last name of High, and on top of it being safe to stand in front of him on the rifle range, he tried to mail home grenade fragments, a spent spoon, and a blasting... Oh, so the spoon, by the way, he's not talking about an actual, eating implement. It's the sort of clip on the grenade that holds the thing. You pull the pin, which activates the primer, and then when you throw it, the spoon flies off, and that means the grenade's now live. That's the thing he's talking about when he says the spoon. Oh, and a blasting cap home to his mother. Yeah, it's called a blasting cap because it explodes. And he tried to mail it in. Oh no. Yeah, so when I first joined up in 1989, the Royal Navy basic training facility is HMS Raleigh, down in Tall Point, just over the river from Plymouth. And my class, there was one guy in the class who went by the name of Reuben Hartley, and everything this guy touched turned to shit. He was from Middlesbrough, that much I can remember. And it was just really bizarre. The bullshit claims he used to come out with were bad enough, but for example, the very first thing he ever said to me when we're there in the new entry, because you spend your first week in this place called New Entry, and you're kept isolated from the rest of the trainees and the ship's company. And they issue you a uniform, and they teach you really, really basic stuff before you actually go into basic training. So you spend your first week in New Entry, and the first day there, when we'd all been collected from the train station by the Navy bus and taken over to HMS Raleigh, we're all milling around in New Entry, and this guy just walks up to me and says, I'm Reuben Hartley. I was once scouted to play for Middlesbrough football team. I mean, it's a really bizarre thing to say to introduce yourself to somebody. But the thing was, it was such obvious bullshit because the guy couldn't even walk properly. He had the weirdest... I don't know if he'd actually had some kind of injury when he was younger, and his leg had never healed properly. But there's absolutely no way this guy was ever even going to play Sunday League football, let alone get scouted from a professional football team. So that was my introduction to this guy. And then as we went through, he never finished basic training. He got, I don't want to say kicked out, but when you're in basic, you get you get a sort of window of opportunity to decide, this isn't for me, I've made a big mistake, I want to get out of here. But it's only valid for as long as you're in, I think, the first couple of weeks of basic. When you have your uniform issued, that includes stuff like your working rig, your dress uniform, although you get measured up for a dress. It's actually tailored to you, so you get measured up for your dress uniform, and then the tailor makes it, and after you've been in training for like 2 weeks, your dress uniform gets issued. And it includes stuff like your headgear, which includes your beret and your white cap. Everybody knows what a sailor's white cap looks like. They didn't have a beret big enough for this guy's head. I don't know if you've ever seen those old Tefal adverts, Tefal, the appliance of science, when they had these like really big-headed, big-brained aliens, kind of like the aliens from the very first pilot of Star Trek. Basically, that was Reuben Hartley. The entire Royal Navy didn't have a beret big enough for this guy's head, but they did have a white cap big enough for his head. So you could always tell our platoon when we were marching around HMS Raleigh, because there'd just be all these ranks of people wearing blue berets, and then right in the middle somewhere there was this massive white hat. At one point, even people who didn't know us, when we'd march over to Trafalgar Galley for lunch, for example, everybody would hang their headgear up, because you don't wear your hat indoors in the Navy unless you're reporting something. And so we'd have lunch, we'd come back down, and where he hung his hat up on the hat pegs in the lobby before you went into the dining hall, somebody painted a big black H on the top of his cap as a helicopter landing pad. I mean, it's horrible, but it was really funny. I remember we were doing our squad run, so in about week 4, I think, of training, they take the entire entry, so there's hundreds of you, all the different classes, from that particular entry. They take you out, and you're wearing what you call your div top, which is like a coloured rugby top, so each division had a specific colour. You're wearing your number 8 trousers and your combat boots, and they take you out, they muster you outside the gymnasium. I don't know if you've ever, probably most of you have never ever been to Tor Point, but it's on the river, and the gymnasium is right down by the river. Now, rivers flow downhill, so you start off on the riverbank outside the gymnasium, and then all of you, running as a squad, will run up to the gate of HMS Raleigh. So it's an uphill run just to get to the gate, and it's about 300 metres. And then they take you on a 5-mile run around the roads outside HMS Raleigh, around Tor Point, and it's uphill and downhill and all that sort of thing. At this point, though, you've been in basic training for like 4 weeks, and you've been doing PT every day. So, I mean, I was not particularly fit when I turned up, but after 4 weeks of getting beasted in PT every day, I was the fittest I'd ever been in my life. Everybody was, and so the squad run was nothing. Hartley didn't even make it to the gate. He'd been doing the same PT as the rest of us, and he was literally gasping for breath, and he just fell over and collapsed at the gate. So he made it the first 300 metres, and then he was out. Also, he wasn't the world's great, and I wasn't a particularly good swimmer. You have to do a swimming test as well in order to pass out a basic training, which I thought was a bit alarming. I was like, don't you have ships? I didn't join up to swim everywhere, but yeah, I mean, you get it. If you have to abandon ship, you've got to at least be able to swim to a lifeboat. So there were 3 of us in my class who failed the initial naval swimming test, and then we had to go for remedial swimming lessons every day, just before dinner. So there was me, another lad whose name I can't remember, who was a good kid, and of course Hartley. And I mean, I'm not strong. It's not that I'm afraid of the water or anything. I can swim. I'm just not a particularly strong swimmer. And the other kid was the same, and obviously so was Harley. But then I figured, because I can... The swimming test was really simple. You wear your overalls and your combat boots, and then you jump in the swimming pool, and it's an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And then you have to swim one length, and then swim halfway back, and then tread water for 2 minutes, and then swim back to the side and out. So you're basically doing 2 lengths with a 2-minute tread water in the middle of it. And it was the tread water bit in the middle of it that just I was having problems with. There's no problem swimming from one end to the other. I was slow, but I could do it. And I figured out that, well, it doesn't matter what swimming style you use, crawl, butterfly, whatever, but you want to conserve energy. And I figured out that I could backstroke forever because it's really, really simple to do and it doesn't use a lot of energy. So instead of treading water, I would just swim little circles and backstroke for the 2 minutes. And I could keep that up for hours if I had to. And that's how I passed my naval swimming test. So I'd swim the one length, swim halfway back, and then just backstroke for 2 minutes, little circles, and then swim back out. And so the PTIs were like, yeah, well done, unconventional, but there's nothing says that you have to actually tread water, so congratulations. Hartley, of course, was still struggling, and the other lad also. He passed the same time as me, so we were, really pleased. That's another tick in the box. We're done. Hartley was still struggling around, so we went back to our division and started cleaning up for evening rounds and getting into night rig. And then Hartley turned up and said, "How did it get along? How did you get along?" We said, "Oh yeah, I passed. Yeah, it was great." I was, "Oh, fantastic, great." So 4 days go by, and then our division petty officer gets a... He basically lied. He hadn't passed at all. He'd failed again. But then he lied about it and hadn't bothered going back for remedial training, thinking that nobody would notice that he wasn't turning up. And so the gymnasium sent a message to the division asking, where the hell is this Hartley kid? He hasn't turned up for his remedial swimming for the last 4 days. He actually thought he was going to get away with it. So... Yeah, no, he never ever passed his swimming test, and after I think 4 or 5 weeks, he just quit. He was never ever going to make it. So yeah, he was the biggest screw up. Well, he wasn't the biggest screw up I ever met in the Navy. He was the biggest screw up I met who never made it into the Navy. There were other screw ups of legendary proportions that I met. This question's going to go on forever and ever and ever. Apologies to anybody else who asked something, but this is a good one. We had an officer on board. It was HMS Newcastle. Yes, it was HMS Newcastle, because it was a ship's visit to Newcastle where this guy managed to get himself so deep in the shit. The thing is, I don't know if you know, you probably all know somebody like this. Really keen, really enthusiastic, but utterly incompetent. Again, everything he touched turned to shit. I cannot remember his name. I can picture him. He wasn't a bad bloke. He was a young sub-lieutenant, fresh out of training. This was his first posting, and he obviously wanted to do well and impress. And I have no doubt that eventually, once he'd managed to unscrew himself and sort himself out, that he ended up being a good officer. But when I knew him, he was absolutely terrible. I can't. I'll try to remember it. It'll probably pop into my head at some point. The ship's company everybody knew this guy was useless. We even had a nickname for it. That was it. Yes, I've just remembered. I think his name was Stilson or something like that. Sub-Lieutenant Stilson, something like that, because his nickname was Stillborn. Freeborn, that was his name. Sub-Lieutenant Freeborn. And everybody just called him Stillborn. Oh God, he was... The incident in particular that I'm thinking of, which was just one of many where he managed to screw everything up, was whenever a ship visits somewhere, somebody gets nominated as the visit liaison officer, and it doesn't have to be an officer. A chief petty officer or a warrant officer can get nominated for it, but it's usually, a lieutenant or below. It's never a lieutenant commander. They've done all that shit. They've paid their dues. They're busy running their own departments. So it's the kind of thing that gets assigned to a junior officer as a sort of training exercise for them to demonstrate their leadership and management abilities. Or a chief petty officer who, they're chief petty officers. They don't need to prove anything to anybody. They're going to do a good job of it. And what it involves is when the ship visits somewhere, sometimes it can be a really, really busy job. Other times there's nothing really happening. Depends where you're going. If you're just popping into somewhere for a fueling stop for a couple of days, then the visit liaison officer basically has nothing to do. But sometimes, you might want to organise sports events for the ship's company to maybe play football against the local team. Maybe you're going somewhere that has a brewery or a vineyard. You might want to organise a ship's visit. There's stuff that can need organising. Well, we were on HMS Newcastle, and we were visiting Newcastle upon Tyne, our affiliated home city. So it was a big, big event. There was going to be, it had the potential to be a big event. However, the ship had just come off a grueling series of exercises, and the captain didn't want to make a fuss. So there were certain things that you would have to do. The captain would have to call in on the Lord Mayor. You know, there were protocol stuff that needed to be done whenever a warship visits a place in the UK, particularly your affiliated home city. But the captain had left instructions that, you know, we'll keep it low key. You know, there will be certain things that we need to do, but honestly, we just want the ship's company to relax because we've had a busy couple of months. Stillborn organised a ship's company march through the city with bayonets fixed and pipes playing. He organised rugby matches, football matches, the whole 9 yards. I mean, this guy was so desperate to impress, he organised a ship's visit with stuff going on all day, every day, for the full 5 days we were there. And he didn't bother to tell anybody. So the first thing the captain knew of the shit that was waiting for us when the ship arrived in Newcastle was when news helicopters were asking permission to overfly the ship and to land on the flight deck to deliver the Lord Mayor and her entourage for the ceremonial entry up the River Tyne and into the city, where the bands were waiting on the jetty for the ship. The news crews were all there, and that was just the start. And of course the thing was, he had organised this all and then gone on 2 weeks leave, so he was waiting on the jetty proud as punch with all of this stuff that he'd organised for the ship. The captain was furious. So yeah, he got summoned to the executive officer's cabin and got told in no uncertain terms, you're going to go in, you're going to speak to the captain. The captain is going to be very angry. He is going to say things to you that you would rather not have him say to you. And the only things you're going to say back to him are, yes, sir, no, sir, and I'm very, very sorry, sir. Yeah, that's just the kind of guy he was. He's so desperate to impress and so enthusiastic. I mean, it's the kind of attributes that you really want in a young trainee naval officer, but he just didn't know when to quit. Anyway, so that question has lasted 15 minutes. Well done, good one. Oh, he's got a second question. Again, really sorry to anybody else who posted a question here. We'll get to them eventually. He says, if you were tasked to direct the Star Wars film, what would you attempt to do without using the main cast of characters? So something like Rogue One, for example. No Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie. He'd go for a movie about Blade Squadron, starting from the testing of the B-Wing. Oh yeah, that was the B-Wing Squadron in the Battle of Endor, wasn't it? Training of the pilots, Top Gun style, to the Battle of Endor, where they introduced themselves to Vader's original flagship, the Devastator, which you see exploding when Admiral Akbar is ordering everyone to target the Executor. Yeah, that's right, the B-Wings were the ones that took that thing out. That's a good question. He's just edited his question. Sorry guys, didn't know it would run on this long. Well, they were good questions. And I'm sure people aren't going to complain that I'm spinning dits about the Navy here. So, yeah, that's a good one. I would have said, I would have told the story about how the rebels got the Death Star plans, but Gareth Edwards already did that with Rogue One. But yeah, that's one for the comments there, I think. What would you do? It probably wouldn't be Star Wars Outlaws. That's a video series that's not doing particularly well. Anyway, moving on. Next question from Yamatog 2. Oh, here we go. Today in the news we learned that a research ship of the Royal New Zealand Navy, HMNZS Manawamui, has hit a reef and sunk. There were no casualties and only a few minor injuries. The ship, however, is considered a total loss. So that's referring to the first question asked by Akiaki Kiakaha. So it was a research ship. I don't think it'd be a major surface combatant with only 75 crew on board, but at least the crew were all right. What procedures does the Royal Navy have regarding ship sinking, both for the sinking ship itself and for assistance? And since you would likely have told us a few times in Mingles, if your ship had ever gone down, did you and your ship ever have to assist other vessels that were sinking or were at risk of sinking during the time of the Royal Navy? No, fortunately, we never had to do any of that. Although, here's a little actually moment for you. So my first ship was HMS Brazen, Type 22 frigate. That ended up being sold to the Brazilian Navy. and they sank it. Well, if they didn't sank it, they definitely ran it aground. My next ship was HMS Coventry, another Type 22 frigate, and it took over the name of Coventry from the Type 42 destroyer of the same name that was hit by an Exocet and sunk in the Falklands. So we're 2 for 2 now so far on ships that I have served on, or connected to ships that I have served on. My next ship was HMS Southampton, which some of you may remember was the one that hit, was it Devil's Rock? In the sort of New Zealand, Australian area, and very, very nearly sank. Tore a massive gash in basically hit submerged rock. Massive inquiry. The ship had to be, I was going to say towed. I actually saw pictures of it. They mounted the ship on another ship and then sailed it back to the UK to be repaired. So we're now 3 for 3. My next ship was HMS Nottingham, another Type 42 destroyer, which very famously zigged when it should have zagged and ended up at one point wrapping itself around the bows of an oil tanker. My next ship, God, what was it? Wasn't the Newcastle? I can't remember. There was another ship, and again, I had HMS Newcastle, I had HMS Manchester, and I can't remember. But one of my other ships was, there had never been a ship of that name. There had been 7 ships of that name. I think it might have been the Manchester, but I'm not entirely sure. But all the previous ships had all either been sunk or captured by the enemy. So I haven't had a very good... Fortunately, I was never on board any of these ships when any of this stuff happened. But at least my first 5 ships, other ships, either that ship itself, in the case of the Brazen, ended up coming to a sticky end, or before I joined them or after I joined them, very, very bad things, usually involving collisions or sinking or being captured by the enemy, happened to every single ship that I ever served on. I don't know if that says anything about the Royal Navy or me, but yeah, there you go. As for the procedures regarding sinking, there weren't any specific... I mean, you know, the ship goes to emergency. You all know what to do when the ship has to go to emergency stations, which would be what would happen if anything of that nature happened. Like when HMS Southampton hit that rock and started sinking, the ship obviously went to emergency stations, and everybody on board has an emergency station. Like you've got an action station that you go to when the ship goes to action when you're on watch, and basically usually if you're on watch you stay where you are, and then you've got an off watch action station. So if you're not manning your place of duty at the time the ship goes to action, then you go to your off watch action station. Then you also have an emergency station, and depending on your job on board, you'll have, like, the chefs tend to form the support party for the firefighting and damage control crews. The writers and the stewards tend to be the first aiders, so you go to your forward or aft first aid post. Anybody who doesn't have a specific job at emergency stations will usually be mustered in the junior rates dining hall to form a reserve pool of manpower, and that would have been what happened on board the Southampton. The damage control and firefighting teams would have gone straight into action. Everybody else would have all mustered in one specific place to be designated as, you know, spare hands to go off and do additional tasks. And so there's that sort of thing is the procedure, but it never occurred during my time. When it comes to a submarine, however, there are specific procedures. Like if a submarine goes missing, there's what they call a sub-miss procedure, where the signal gets sent out, and anybody who is anywhere near the area where the submarine was last reported gets diverted to start searching for it. There's also a sub-sunk procedure, which follows on from a sub-miss, where it's become apparent that the submarine has actually sunk, and then, you know, there's procedures in place for the rescue and recovery operation. But as far as an actual ship, then the procedure is the ship just goes to emergency stations, and because they very nearly lost the Southampton. They took on some serious amounts of flooding, but it's a testament to, because everybody on board, of course, is trained in damage control and firefighting. It's not, you know, if there's a fire on board, it's not like you can call the fire brigade in the middle of the Atlantic. And 95% of all fires on board Royal Navy warships are extinguished by the person who discovers the fire. You take that sort of thing very, very seriously, because fires on ships are bad, really bad. We've had a couple of bad ones in the 30 to 40 or so years of my experience with the Navy, but we've never lost a ship. And most of them, like I say, get put out in the first couple of minutes by the person encountering the fire in the first place. Anyway, next question. Oh, hang on. On an unrelated note, he says, today exactly marks the 50th anniversary of the first screening of the science fiction space opera epic that is Space Battleship Yamato on the 6th of October 1974. Wow, 1974. Holy crap, I was 4 years old. Wow, time flies, doesn't it? Well, anyway, speaking of time flying, moving on to the next question from Sir Blake. You used to collaborate with other YouTubers quite a bit. World of Tanks with Circumflexes and Quickie Baby, who turned... wow, Quickie Baby's 37 now. Holy shit. Now I feel really old. War Thunder with Fly Daily and Origin. Yeah, but that was all years ago. These days you post more replay reviews. I absolutely love the collab videos, like the very honourable derping in War Thunder. Yeah, that was hilarious. Me, Fly, and Origin used to jump into things like Catalinas, bombers, anything with lots and lots of gun turrets, and then the audience would jump into biplanes and try to ram us and knock us out of the sky. It was so funny. The TOG parties in World of Tanks, yeah. Have you thought of doing more collaborations with other YouTubers again? Maybe invite one of those mentioned before to come on Mingles with Jingles. It's not a terrible idea, but you'd be surprised how much organisation it actually takes to do that sort of thing. Plus, Fly's doing really, really well. He's got, I think, it's a huge YouTube channel now. He was kind of small when I was doing stuff with him, but he's done extremely well for himself. I'm not sure what happened to Origin. But, they were all good guys, and well done to all of them. But like I say, it does take... Because I'm a one-man show here, so I basically, I don't have an editor, I don't have a script writer, I don't have researchers. It's probably one of the reasons why I get so much stuff wrong, because I have to rely on myself to get it all done. And I very much kind of work hand to mouth. Like, I don't know on any given day what the next day's video is going to be. I tend to just kind of make it up as I go along. I see something cool and interesting, I think, oh yeah, that's good, that's what I'm going to do for tomorrow. Doing this sort of thing would require me to actually start getting organised. I'm not very good at that. And I do kind of like just doing my own thing, but I'm certainly not going to say no. Somebody was talking about doing a collaboration with somebody like Trakinafel, where we just, shoot the shit and talk about ships. That would be perfect. I might have to look into that. Anyway, it seems Mingles with Jingles is used as a source on my... I have a Wikipedia page again? Because I know I used to. And then it got taken down because apparently I wasn't famous. I'm not complaining. It's not like I think I should have a Wikipedia page. I'm just a dumb old ex-sailor who does videos on YouTube. There's nothing remarkable about me. But I definitely used to have one, and then apparently Wikipedia just deleted the page, said, yep, no, this guy's a nobody. Apparently now I have a Wikipedia page again. I had no idea. I'm going to have to go and look that up. Well, anyway, moving on. Next question from Not the Sharpest Tool. Greetings from Seattle again. 3 a.m. over here. Oh, Lord. First, as we always joke, yes, I am actually recording. Yes, and I did screw it up a couple of times, but it's definitely going today, and the microphone is definitely on. I tested it before I started doing this episode. Where are we? Oh, yes, the question. First, I've recently been told of a traditional prank that sailors in the US Navy pull on new recruits for their first voyage. The mail boy watch prank. Does the Royal Navy have a similar tradition? Oh, we have so many. Second, as a side topic, there's a tradition in the US Navy submarine branch of stealing and hiding the XO's door. I had not heard of that one. That's awesome, which I'm sure you'll find amusing. Have you ever been involved in a prank on a senior officer? Okay, let's think about some pranks. In the Navy, we call them easies. You catch somebody out on an easy, and there's a proud tradition of it in the Navy. There's so many. You get sent to the buffer's store for a left-handed to be issued with a left-handed screwdriver or a left-handed hammer or whatever, or you get sent down to the paint locker to get some tartan paint, or you wouldn't believe the stuff that people fall for. And it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel with somebody who's new to the ship, because they don't know any better. I'm not even sure if they still issue them, but your working boots, they're called DMS boots. It stands for direct molded sole, and they're basically insulated, electrical proof, steel toe gap ankle boots, and these are the boots that you wear all the time. They're called DMS boots, but nobody calls them DMS boots. We all call them steaming boots, or steaming bats, or just your bats. And the reason they're called steaming boots is because they're the boots that you use. Oh, hit the microphone there. They're the boots that you wear when the ship is steaming. So, they're your everyday work boots. But I guarantee that whenever somebody joins the ship fresh out of training, they will get told, Have you had your steaming boots steamed yet? Like, what? No, what? I have to get them steamed? Yep, no problem. Okay, so change into your plimsolls and take your steaming boots up to the main galley and get the chefs to put them in the pressure steamer. And they'll do it because they don't know any better. And these are all just like impromptu, like your messmates will pull these kind of gags on you. I remember when we came back from my very first ship, HMS Brazen, I kind of got off easy because I joined HMS Brazen during the Gulf War, or right before the Gulf War. Gulf War was 1991. I joined the ship in like November, December 1990, and things were gearing up. Operation Desert Shield was in effect. It hadn't quite turned into Operation Desert Storm, the shooting war. So people didn't really have time to prank me, so I kind of learned about them from watching them being done to other people when the ship got back after the war. And one of the things that happened when we got, because we were the first ship back, because there was a 4-ship task group. There was us, HMS Nottingham, HMS, I can't remember, possibly Southampton. 2 ships that I ended up serving on, actually, with the Type 42 destroyers, who were up there doing air defence escort for the American task group. And then there was HMS London, which was the task force flagship, ourselves, HMS Brazen, and also the hospital ship RFA Argus. And London was escorting the Argus, and we were down in the southern end of the Gulf escorting merchantmen through the Straits of Hormuz. And ourselves, when we were relieved after the war had ended, although there was still a lot of stuff to do, we were relieved by another task force that had the first women in the Royal Navy on board. Can't remember the name of the ship. But this 4-ship task force came out to relieve us, but they decided, well, we actually want to keep more than 4 ships, so we'll send 2 ships home and 2 will get to stay. So there'll be a 6-ship task force for the Commodore to take charge of. And we got nominated, along with one of the other Type 42s, to return home. So we were, quite happy with that. We got back, we got sent away on like 4 weeks leave, and then when we came back, we got a bunch of women on board as well. WRENs, Women's Royal Naval Service, although they're not called WRENs anymore. The WRENs doesn't exist anymore now. We're all just Royal Navy. And of course, they were, oh God, they got picked on mercilessly because they, an entire mess full of girls who had never been on a ship before. So, and honestly, you could catch them out on easies without even trying. I was in the radio operator's mess deck on board the Brazen, and you'd be like the ship junior race dining hall and the main galley, and then on the opposite side of the flat was the hatch down to our mess deck. So you'd go from the junior race dining hall down the hatch, and then you turn left, and that was the radio operator's mess, and you turn right, and that was the girls' mess. And so, first day back from leave, all these girls are joining. It's like, oh, this is really weird, and they're all unpacking their stuff, and they're all really excited and a little bit scared and nervous and so on and so on. And then it's time for the evening meal, and so we all file out of the mess to go up and queue up in the junior rates dining hall. And of course they didn't know what time meal time was, and we weren't even trying to catch him out on an easy or anything. And one of the lads popped his head in through the door of their mess and said, "It's evening scran, girls, you coming? I'm buying." And they said, "We have to pay for it." It's just, we thought, this is going to be so funny, because they had no idea. Right there and then we knew They were going to fall for absolutely everything. It was great. Have I ever been involved in a prank on a senior officer? I don't think I have, actually. I'm sure if I had, I would remember. I certainly had plenty of opportunities. I spent 2 years working in Victory Building, which is the Second Sea Lord's headquarters. It's like when you're on a ship, a lieutenant commander is like God. You know, they're head of department. Guy in charge of like the warfare department is a lieutenant commander. Guy in charge of the logistics department is a lieutenant commander, or a very, very senior lieutenant who's due to be promoted to lieutenant commander. The captain is usually a commander, and it's like, whoa. Or maybe a captain. It's like, whoa. But you go to some place like Victory Building, and lieutenant commanders make the tea, right? There's admirals and captains and commodores everywhere. There's dozens of lieutenant commanders, you know. So I definitely had the opportunity to pull a prank or two on a couple of senior officers, but I'm pretty sure I didn't dare. If I had, I'm sure I would have remembered. So sorry about that. But yeah, pranks in the Navy. We have, I think we're one of the, I don't think the US Navy does it anymore, but I think the Royal Navy still does, the crossing the line ceremony, which is, maybe the US Navy still does it, but when you cross the equator, it's the only institutionalized hazing ritual that's still in force in the Navy. So anybody who has never crossed the equator, when you're on board a ship that's crossed the equator, King Neptune comes on board and addresses the ship's company, and there's all kinds of stuff that happens. Like the day before, the Chief Petty Officers Mess, honestly, I have no idea where these traditions come from. The Chief's Mess get into their, what they call Fearnaut suits. They're made of compressed wool. We don't use them anymore, but they're really, really good. They date back from the Second World War. It's basically firefighting suits made out of compressed wool, and you can take a blowtorch to these things and you won't feel the heat. I mean, they're amazing. So the Chief Petty Officers Mess get into their, they raid the firefighting station, and they all get into these Fearnaut suits, and they go around as the Bears. And they start at the front end of the ship, and they go through every junior rates mess deck all the way to the back end of the ship. Oh, excuse me, hit the microphone there again. In preparation for King Neptune coming on board. And they basically have a fight with all the junior rates. It's like, you know, you get a minute. It's all right, fellas, we're in. Lights out, and then it's a free-for-all. And everybody gets a good punching, and you're allowed to fight back. They effectively take their rank off the second they come into the mess deck dressed up as one of the Bears, and it's all done in. There's a couple of black eyes and a couple of bruises and what have you, but nobody means anything by it. Fortunately, when this happened on HMS Newcastle, we were in 2Q port mess, which is right. I mean, where the rearmost mess deck on junior rates mess deck on the ship. There's us and the chef's mess right next to each other. We're in 2Q port, they're in 2Q starboard. And so by the time the chiefs got to us, I mean, you felt sorry for the guys in the forward mess decks, the radio operators and stuff, because the chiefs were fresh when they went into their mess decks to give them all a good thumping. By the time they got to us, they had a couple of black eyes, a couple of bloody noses, and they were like, all right, fellas, let's just get this over and done with. Their heart really wasn't into it. But that all happens the day before you actually cross the line. And then on the day of the crossing the line, King Neptune, who's basically played by... And all these costumes come out of nowhere. Right, you've got King Neptune, you've got the mermaids. It's all organised by the senior rates messes. So it's usually the executive warrant officer or the most senior enlisted man on board who plays King Neptune, and they've got the beard, he's got the trident, he's got the crown, he's got all the mermaids with him. All these, I have no idea where all these costumes get hidden, but they all come out for the crossing the line ceremony. He addresses the ship's company, and everybody's mustered on the flight deck, where suddenly, from somewhere, a swimming pool has appeared. A blow-up swimming pool that gets filled with water from the firefighting hoses, and anybody who has not crossed the line, crossed the equator, gets initiated. Excuse me. So the chief cook will have been making his candies for everybody that are basically just curry pills, absolutely revolting. So everybody who's going through the initiation has to have a couple of these, and then they get tossed into the pool, given a good punching, ducked, and then they get sent off for a haircut. And all of these electric clippers come out, and they get their head shaved bald, but the clippers have all had the electrics messed around with, so they're constantly short-circuiting and electrocuting you. Don't worry, it's all reasonably safe. The chief electrician makes sure it's not going to kill anybody, but it'll give you a nasty zap. And all this stuff still goes on. I'm pretty sure it still does, even now in the 21st century. But I had heard that the US Navy had banned the practice, which seems like a shame. Because once it's all done, you get given a certificate and you become a scalyback. You get your scalyback certificate, where because you've either been over the line and you've gone through the ceremony, in which case you're a scalyback, or you have not yet been over the line, in which case God help you when you do, because you're a pollywog, and the pollywogs all have to go through the initiation ceremony. So wow, these questions there's some really good questions today. I think I've only gotten through 3 or 4, but we're almost 40 minutes in now, so maybe we're going to get one more in. And then we're going to have to call this one a day. I hope you've been enjoying this, by the way, because I do love talking about my time in the Navy. And I know it is usually a reasonably popular thing for me to do. So the final question of the day, before we knock this one on the head, comes from Bishop. And again, apologies to everybody else who had some good questions lined up, but these ones have been taking me forever to get through. It says, Dear Overlord, I hope you're feeling good. My question's in 4 parts. Are we going to be here all day? 1, are you recording? Yes, I am. 2, yep, yes, I'm sure. 3, could you check anyway, please? Okay, yes. Yeah, I can see the recording light is on and the microphone symbol is up, so this is actually, I hope, getting recorded. Can you imagine if I'd gone through all... you guys here on Discord listening to this live would have had a real treat. Everybody else on Mingles with Jingles, if I'd screwed this up, because this is probably going to be a really good episode. I've done it before, of course, but anyway, final and probably real question this time. If you had the choice between finishing Alien Isolation and giving us your detailed opinion on Rings of Power, which one would you choose? Well, there's no way I'm finishing Alien Isolation. So, Rings of Power, yes, the Amazon TV show. The one with the sympathetic orcs who have families and who are just trying to get by and make a living as farmers. Did the people that write this, did they ever actually read The Lord of the Rings or watch any of the movies? Orcs with families. There are no female orcs. Orcs don't breed, they're made. Orcs are elves who've been tortured and warped by the Dark Lord. That's where orcs come from, aside from the Uruk-hai that Saruman bred. But I mean, you saw how the Uruk-hai... They don't have families. They don't raise children. They don't work farms. That right there tells you everything that you need to know about the Rings of Power. And that's probably more than you need to know about the Rings of Power. But anyway, thank you to everybody who posted the questions. I hope you enjoyed the answers. I certainly had a blast. Time's flown by doing this Discord Q&A. I've really enjoyed answering these questions. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to me answer them, because that's pretty much all we have time for today. Again, apologies to anybody who didn't get your question asked, but I hope you've been satisfied with the show anyway. If you're watching this as Monday's Mingles with Jingles, hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.